Welcome to the podcast. Tonight, I am joined by two fantastic individuals. Firstly, I've got the man with the brain that comes with a 50-page rule book. It's Def. How you going?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks. And how are you?
I'm fantastic. Having a great day, actually. So,
That is
joining
awesome.
us tonight, Def. You been playing many games lately, Def? I know you've been playing some.
I've been playing some, and suddenly I started playing a few games over the online platforms for reasons we all know of lockdown and distance. So that's been an interesting experience.
Yeah, I'm aware of that because obviously you've had a chance to teach me a couple of games recently, so much appreciated.
Yeah.
But joining us tonight, Def, I've got someone whose ability to find games at a discount is as unbelievable as catching a shark in a bathtub. It's Jules.
How you doing, Steve? I was pretty
Not
proud
too
of.
bad.
I was pretty proud of the last catch I got. Actually, that was
That was a big one.
That was the main expansion for adding 6, 5, and 6 players to Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. So that was
Order in Chaos. Is that?
Yep, that's the one. Yep.
Yeah.
$39 on Amazon.
That's ridiculous.
I know.
So ridiculous.
Couldn't believe it myself.
Funny story. I've just had a moment that reminded me of what I did today. So a little bit of behind the curtain stuff here. My day job is a youth support officer, and I run programs in schools to help teenagers through relationships and stuff. And today we were talking about jealousy, and I asked them, give me some examples of jealousy, and they had a few. And then one of them said, "Oh, what about you, sir?" And I'm like, "When I see people buying board games." And they all just looked at me with these weird faces like, what? I don't understand. And you just reminded me of that, Jules. With your $39 fine.
Yep.
Very good. So on tonight's show, we're talking about a few things. We are doing our second last bracket finalization, which means of the first round, which means on our Saturday episode, which will be the trivia show, we'll actually finalize the first round of the bracket, and then we'll be into the second round next week. That's a bit exciting. Obviously, we'll do our sizzling games as per usual, talk a little bit about Kickstarter, swear our oaths, but we've also got our topic of the week this week, and it's all about heavy games. And we're going to ask questions like, why does a heavy game excite you? What is it about a heavy game that makes you want to play that? And we'll go through all that thought process and rule book reading, etc., almanacs, appendixes, whatever you need to make the game its own. So we'll be covering that shortly. But to start off, we'll get straight into our sizzling games. So tonight, I'm going to head over to Canberra and speak to Jules first about your sizzling game. What have you got, Jules?
It's a game that I'm sort of late to the party with. Most people know it, and many people consider it a classic now, and that's Azul. I just haven't had a chance to play it until this past. Well, I got to try it about a month ago through one of our Discord members, but I've picked myself up a copy, and I've been having a great time with it. It's been excellent.
So you haven't played any Azul so far?
That's so bizarre. Hey?
No, I literally
Please kick this person out of the podcast.
Oh dear. Well, I feel like I've caught up and I've been able to sort of somewhat redeem myself, I suppose. But yeah, for those who don't know Azul, if there are any people, maybe I'm the last person on planet Earth to find out about this game. But essentially, you're trying to create this sort of this grid of tiles, and you do it by drafting from what they call the factories. And the trick of the game is when you pick a particular color, you have to take all of that color that's available from this position that you've taken it. And any excess that you can't fit in the rows on your board, you have to put down. They sort of smash and go down to the bottom, and you lose points for those excess tiles. It's really, really straightforward. You're just trying to create these rows and columns, and if you're able to place tiles next to each other, you score more points for those, and you get points for putting all of a particular color out or completing a row. A column, and the game trigger ends when one person completes just one row. So it's I found it quite interesting in the handful of plays I've done in the past week. Some games can just end in minutes because someone just pushes the end of the game really fast. And then some games go for like 20 minutes because everyone's trying to fill the whole grid. and they really want to maximize the points they can get, and someone eventually pulls that trigger. But it's a great game. I love the tactile feel of those tiles. That's definitely what makes the game. Being able to touch those nice thick plastic tiles. It just wouldn't be the same if they were cardboard pieces. So whoever designed that game and thought, no, we need to make these plastic tiles, was right on the money with that one.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the range in scores. While you were talking, I just quickly jumped on and checked out my plays of this.
Mm-hmm.
And the top score we've had was once I got 152, and the lowest winning score was 40.
Yeah, there you go.
It's,
Yeah, it totally depends on your player style and what you want to do. And look, there's a lot of luck in the game and what tiles come out, because you might, if you don't complete any of those rows, the tiles stay there until the next round, and then you might be just needing one tile to complete a row, and you just don't pull out that color for a whole round, and you just can't do anything about it. But
yes.
Yeah, that's definitely happened to me, but it's still fun, even though there's a lot of luck involved. There's definitely a bit of hate drafting as well, which I get a kick out of. But yeah, it's great. I love it. I think it's good in any collection. It's fast. It scratches that little bit of itch to think just a little bit and how to strategize and maximize your points. But yeah, it's fantastic. Really, really like it.
It's a really good game, and that's exactly what you said. It's thinky enough to make you scratch your head a bit, even in quick games. But if you love the feeling of the tiles, and the tiles are magnificent, I agree 100%. The game would just not be what it is without them.
No.
The additional Azul that was published later on, called Azul Summer Pavilion.
Mm-hmm.
We've bought that, and we found that we play that a lot more than the first one. It has a little bit more strategy in it. It has these flowers that you have to fill in, and you take points the more tiles you put next to each other, and you fill them in. Essentially the same game, but with a few twists in it. But that one has same type of tiles, the same material, but they are rectangular tiles. And you can use them to build all sorts of funny structures as you wait for your turn and your opponent to play. So if you love the tiles, no questions asked, just go buy Azul Summer Pavilion.
Jules, have you had a chance to play the other side of the board yet?
No, I haven't. So I've pretty much after the first time I played it, I wanted to go to the other side where it doesn't have the pre-filled positions and it's just open slather. I mean, you have to follow the rules of one color per row and column, but no, I haven't done that yet. I haven't found anyone that wants to burn their brain just a little bit more, because you definitely have to think more in that one.
For sure, it took the game from an 8 to a 9 for me when I first played on the other side.
Yes,
for that reason, it was great, because in a weird kind of way, possibly the easiest strategy is actually just to follow the pattern that is on the other side, because it works. I play with with a couple of people in my gaming group, and two of them got stuck where they didn't have anywhere where they could go because of the tiles that were left and the fact that they'd gone out of sync. So there was no way they could actually continue to it, which was interesting because you obviously don't have that problem on the first side. So I definitely recommend. I think you'd love that. I think it's for someone who likes thinky games like you do. I think you'd really appreciate that other side for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. So Azul, I've Stained Glass of Sintra. Did you ever play that one, Def?
No, I haven't, because I've heard that of the three Azuls, that one is the sort of weakest link, and I haven't played that yet. Might eventually, but for the moment, what I'm finding is, as I said, we've got both the first Azul and Summer Pavilion, and we rarely go back to the original one now. We play Summer Pavilion, 9 out of 10 times. So I wonder, if another Azul purchase would be going to waste.
Well, I don't know whether my opinion has much sway with you, Def, but I agree. I didn't particularly like Stained Glass of Sintra. I found it was it had a few good things with it, but it's basically they've got this situation. You know how you can be left with tiles in Azul? Well, in Stained Glass of Sintra, what happens is the glass essentially falls to the floor, and you have this sort of accumulating negative points thing that you're trying to resolve at each time, and it's all right, but it's just it almost seems like there's an obvious way to play the game, where in Azul, I think you can kind of go at it a few different ways, and it really depends on what your opponents are doing and what they're taking. And I didn't find that in Stained Glass, so I actually got rid of it after a while. But and it was enough to make me not want to buy Summer Pavilion. So I'm interested to hear you say that you quite like that. So.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, Azul, with a supporting Summer Pavilion plug as well. What about yourself, Def? What have you been playing?
I've been playing a Vital Lacerda game. Surprise, surprise.
No way.
This one is a cooperative game called CO2 Second Chance. And it is a re-implementation, I guess, from the previous game called simply CO2 that was published a few years ago. It's a cooperative game where players team up to try and prevent global disaster by, rising levels of CO2 by environmental pollution. And the whole point of the game is to figure out which areas of the world have specific needs in renewable energy sources and what types of sources. So you've got solar, you've got wind, you've got water or recycling and all that. And then you have to start proposing projects around these renewable energy plants. So the game has only 3 actions that you can do. You either propose a project, and you have to build the infrastructure for that, and then you build the actual plant. And if you build enough of these plants, then at the end of each decade, because the game plays over 4 decades, at the end of each decade, all the regions of the world that have not had their energy needs met during your renewable energy plants, they simply go and build coal plants that create a lot of carbon dioxide. So in a sense, you're trying to save the planet, and the CO2 levels rise at the end of each decade, and it is just an extremely thematic game, because when you make a proposal for a plan, you take a grant from government for that, and then you have scientists that you can send to work on that proposal. And when they leave that proposal, which essentially means moving your scientist off the board to go to a summit that has this topic to talk about, your knowledge about this topic, about recycling or about water renewable energy. And you use that knowledge to build infrastructure and build the actual plans afterwards. And then, that's how the game progresses. But what makes it really unique is it's very thematic, but it's also it has a very puzzly feeling to it. It is extremely tight. So depending on the number of players, you have less and less actions or rounds available in the game. So imagine you've got 4 decades, and each decade has 4 rounds if there's 2 players playing, 3 rounds if there's 3 players, and only 2 rounds if there's 4 players. And that's it. And in every round, you can only do 1 action. That's it.
Wow.
So the games that we've managed to actually win, we've only managed to win all the times we've won. We've managed to win at the very last move of the last player playing the game. So the maths behind it must be absolutely spot on, because aside from being able to keep, having to keep the CO2 levels low, you also have to meet certain demands from the United Nations around compliance and things like that, which is represented by some cards on the game. It is just very thematic. It is very pretty. Ian O'Toole has done the art for this game, as with the other Vital Lacerda games, and we've been enjoying it quite a bit.
Nice one. Is this the first cooperative Lacerda game that you played?
Yes, I mean, we also play Escape Plan, which you don't really call cooperative, but there is a hint, of trying to sort of avoid the police together and escape with the money you stole from the bank. But I think this is the main cooperative game that's come out from that designer, and as with his other designs, we absolutely love it.
I'm interested. This we'll probably cover some of this in our topic, but on a scale of Vinhos to On Mars, where does this fall for Lacerda games?
In terms of complexity,
Yeah.
It is on the Vinhos side, so I would probably argue that CO2 is on a slightly lower level. Very, very close though. But if I had to pick one of the two, which one is the more complex, I'd say Vinhos, just by a very slim margin though.
Okay.
The only reason being the game is actually very, very puzzly, a lot more than Vinhos. But what makes it less complex is that there's only so many things you can do. There's not really much. There's a
Right.
almost defined path. You have to make sure you can build as many of these renewable energy plants as you can, because if you even miss one, so for instance, when the decade finishes, in advance you have 4 actions each player for 2 players, and that's it. So in total, you've got 8 actions. And you need 3 actions to build a plant: the proposal, the infrastructure, and then to actually build it. So in the first round, you can only build 2 plants. It's just math. And if for some reason you avoid it and you keep doing proposals, for example, because that gives you money or gives you extra scientists, then the planet will die. You don't escape it. It's a very unforgiving game. I remember we played one with my partner where we sort of tried to ignore each other's goals, because each player has private goals and you're not meant to discuss these. And in that specific game, I was only focused on my goal and nothing else. And we actually lost from the first or even second decade. It was very quick. It's very unforgiving. So
Wow.
from that side, it's not easier, but it has a clearer path forward. Whereas in Vinhos, you can do a whole bunch of stuff that can give you victory points at the end. This one, you just kill the planet. So
Wow. Okay.
It's interesting because it's just like I don't associate cooperative games with Lacerda. It's usually games that you really have to outthink what your opponents are doing as opposed to outthink the game, I guess. So I'll be interested to try this one if you're ever up for another teach.
yeah, of course, it seems to be the theme of the month. So why not?
Yeah, it definitely does. So that was CO2 Second Chance. Was that right?
Yes.
Yep, excellent. So my one's a bit different. I've gone with a game that's been pretty hard to find that I've been interested in for a while. It's called Unmatched. So if you're like me, you might have seen this on a few presenters from the US because it's been out there for a while, but it hasn't really hit Australia markets. So as far as I could see, anyway. So Unmatched is a 2-player battle game. It's a miniature battles game, but it's not like a large miniatures. You just like a normal size character miniature. But I've got the Cobble and Fog version, which has got Sherlock Holmes, the Invisible Man, Dracula, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as their characters. And basically, you choose a character, you set yourself out on the board. So my son chose the Invisible Man, which meant he got these fog clouds that he was able to put out and basically use as portals, so he could kind of hide behind the fog, I guess, and move around. I had Watson with me, so Watson kind of followed me around or went and did my bidding tried to battle against the Invisible Man while I kind of stayed back, or Sherlock sort of stayed back and let him take the brunt of that. And it was just this really interesting map. It's like probably 20 circles of spaces that you can move to. There's a couple of hidden paths that you can take, again, because it's that Sherlock Holmes, it's that Cobble and Fog style of artwork that it allows that. And that's kind of unique to this version. So you can sort of get around the board sneakily, I guess. And then once for example, Watson had a range attack. So long as my target was within the same color circle that I was, which is about 4 or 5 different circles, I can attack them. But otherwise, the only other option is a melee attack, which you need to be on the next circle to your opponent. So it's a bit of a cat and mouse around the board. And it was interesting to see it play out because we'd never played before, my son and I, but we love these 2-player competitive battle games. I don't know what it is, but I found my partner for that. It's not my wife, it's my son. Games like Dice Throne, we love to play. Undaunted Normandy, even like Disney Villainous, we like to play that 2-player because it's really back and forth at 2 players. So this worked really well. Baseball Highlights 2045 is another one that we can kind of go against each other. So this one really fit well. And I was really it's one of those things where, although I might be getting beaten at some points, I'm just sort of really proud of my son for playing the role how it should be played. So he's the Invisible Man, and he just kept getting away from me all the time. You would have thought a 10-year-old would just want to attack. And every time I'd kind of set up a play where I could be nearby, so on my next move I could move and then attack, he'd shimmy off under the fog on the other side of the board, and I'd be stuffed. I'm like, where do I go now? And just walk around.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it was really good. And basically, you have one of those meters that you turn to show how much how much health you've got left. And so I had a lot more health to lose. I had 16 on Holmes and 8 on Watson, where he just had 15 on the Invisible Man. But because he was able to evade so much, it was really, really tight. And what happens is every time you want to move, you got to pick up a card off your deck. And then when you play cards, they go into your discard. However, at no point do you shuffle your discard and make them your deck again. Once you run out of deck, you exhaust and you lose 2 health for every time you need to go and draw a card and there's not a card there. So we played and we danced around this board, and then eventually I won because in one turn I attacked him. He blocked my attack, but he said he had to draw 3 cards and he didn't have 3 cards left to draw. So he lost 2 cards, two because of that. And then I had a after the battle condition that said that if he was next to me, he lost another 2 points. So I won that, but I had 1 health left. So we only played it the one time. Seems like it's pretty balanced. It seems like it's a pretty even matchup. And I'm sure that once we play it a few more times and try the other characters out, we'll have a bit better of an understanding. So it's kind of like a first impressions at this point, but I was enamored with it straight away. I thought the characters really worked on theme. It was really frustrating at some point because Watson died early, and in my deck was a couple of cards I could only use with Watson, so they were just burn cards. I thought, like I said, the Invisible Man, I thought that was excellent, the way that worked on the board. But more importantly, it was an interesting little chess match on this board where you really had to time your attacks, because if you stuck around for just one move too long, then you left yourself wide open. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. And yeah, the whole series is now piqued my interest after playing it.
So there's other themed boxes for Unmatched, isn't there? And you can mash them together?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess a similar sort of style would be the Funkoverse style games where you can do the same thing. So in Unmatched, this is done by Restoration Games. So they've really just pushing content. So I think the first box had I think maybe Godzilla, Bruce Lee. I can't think of some other ones.
So you could have Bruce Lee fighting Dracula.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's so cool.
They've even come out with the Jurassic Park one, so you can have raptors fighting Sherlock Holmes. So I'm keen as now. I've spent the afternoon after we played it just going through and going, ooh, that looks interesting. And so there's it's definitely being heavily supported. Restoration Games do a great job of putting out good content and making it look great, but also backing it up with extra content. If you like the game, there's more there for you if you want to go looking. So yeah, I'm keen as. I may have ordered the Battle of Legends original box this afternoon. I mean, I definitely did not, honey, if you're listening. If you're looking for a little battle game, 2 players, it took us about 35 minutes to play, and that's a first play. So, and also we ended it the long way by someone running out of cards in their deck. So you could quite easily play a few battles that might only take 15, 20 minutes. So nice, easy, quick game that packs a lot of punch, pardon the pun. So that is Unmatched.
Very
Cobble and Fog, or or just Unmatched. It doesn't necessarily have to be Cobble and Fog.
Nice.
All right, well, that'll do us for our sizzling games today. We're going to move straight on to our topic of the week. I just realised that I always say topic of the week, but we do 2 podcasts a week.
Oh,
That's true.
good catch after 30 episodes.
Oh, well. Topic of the day.
Yeah.
Topic of the half week.
Topic of the podcast.
That would be better, yes.
Yeah.
So tonight's topic is heavy games. We've talked a little bit about heavy games in our topics in the past. Normally talked about what makes a heavy game, what makes a game carry the sort of the tag of a heavy game, or comparing them to light games. But this is specifically, why do we like heavy games? So in our podcast group, I would probably say Jules and Def are probably the people who play heavy games more than most. And I'd probably say I would imagine Jules agrees with me that Def probably takes the cake as far as playing them the absolute most. So I'm going to throw to Def first and say, what is it about heavy games that excites you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one as well because I used to be quite intimidated by them not so long ago. It was really interesting because I found a photo from my board game shelf from November 2019, and there's a few games there that would not be categorized as anywhere near as heavy. 2 games, heavy games, which I hadn't played yet because I was scared of them, and nothing else. And so this escalated very, very quickly after playing Venus in Christmas last year. And I think I've developed quite a bit of passion for them. And I think I can break it down a little bit and see what you guys think, because you've been playing some with me the last couple of weeks. And the first bit is, I am just very intrigued. I am curious to see how these things unpack, how their mechanics connect, how they work. It's like discovering, a treasure box that you have to solve, like a puzzle that you have to solve, and you feel satisfaction at the end, except you can do it over and over again, and every time it's different, but you just kind of know its language, if it makes sense. So, that curiosity gets pretty intense when it is also a theme that you're interested in. And the satisfaction when I go through the rules and learn the game is, I cannot compare that to a light or light medium game. And I still love, light and medium games, but the heavy games and learning them just gives me a different level of satisfaction when you learn them. And then I was going to also mention that the rewarding experience when you actually master the games, and by master I mean you've played them 3 or 4 times, you're pretty confident about how to go about things. You might still get beaten by more experienced players, but you feel you understand the game, and at that point it stops becoming a heavy game. Really, it just becomes a game that you know really well and understand its language, and gives you a very, very rewarding experience when you play. And this is more probably personal note, but I'm sure other people will relate. I like putting my brain to work. I like it when I get deep into the thinking of these games, because it distracts me from reality. It puts me deep into the mode of actually playing the game, and I feel that serves another purpose of transferring you into the world of the game a lot more than what an abstract game can do, or a thematic game, which is pretty easy. You roll a couple of dice and you play it. Those serve their purpose as well, but that has been quite useful for me, and maybe the main reason why I've been drawn to these games so much lately.
I really like your use of the word language there. I totally get that, because the heavy games that I've played, it's not been a situation where I play it once and I go, yes, yeah, I'm all over this. And it usually is like that third or fourth play where, like you say, even if I'm being beaten, I know why I'm being beaten. I can see what the other player has done. I understand it, and I can kind of learn from that and be better the next time, kind of thing. And that's because I understand the game at that point. Where maybe after that first play, I'm still going, I kind of understand what happened here. Maybe I might try this next time. So I really like the way you use the word language there. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the reason for that is after playing that first game, which happened to be a Vitalicer game, and we kind of owe it to the designer. Our love for heavy games has come from that, no doubt. And after learning that game, then it kind of escalated very quickly. We went, from Venus to Escape Plan on Mars, through the Ages project. Pretty heavy stuff, and it almost feels like all of these games, they have, they don't have any similarities with each other. Maybe they share some mechanics, but it almost feels like they're this sort of language that I said before is a, they have a common approach to it, or you have to approach them in a similar manner, completely different to other, lighter games. And it might be the reason why, after playing a couple of these, we seem to be taking on, new games that we buy a lot quicker and a lot easier. So it's not uncommon for us to buy something, with a BGG weight of 4.2 and go, okay, that was easy enough. Nothing too complicated about that. In reality, we'd be very intimidated, only a year ago with these types of games.
Yeah, for me, I feel like in terms of my involvement in the hobby, my progression towards heavy games I really have gone from light games to mid games to heavy games. I haven't had a jump, and I feel like I've noticed a few interesting things about heavy games in going through that progression. In a lot of mid-weight games, you notice that when you have your turn, often you have maybe 2 or 3 sort of forks in the road of what decisions you can do. In heavy games, have you ever held like a super frayed piece of rope? It looks like that in my mind. It's just there's 1,000 different options in that you could choose at this point in time, and then that one path you choose to take then has 1,000 different options from there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what I've come to understand about heavy games is it's not the actions themselves that are complicated. It's the consequences. It's the knock-on effects from your choices and the interplay that those decisions have. On Mars is a fantastic example of this. Just there's so much you can do, but you're not sure what you should do. And when you commit to a decision that doesn't necessarily become a clear path, it's just as uncertain the very next turn. You're like, okay, well, what should I do now? It's just so you feel like instead of walking through a forest with these paths, you're just walking through a forest with absolutely no path, and it's as thick as the bush can be. It's just, man, but it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding to feel like you've navigated your way through that and come out with some sort of strategy, I suppose, which is really, really exciting, I find, when I'm playing these heavy games.
It's interesting that you mentioned On Mars, because I think when we played it together was your first play, right? And
yep.
I could hear you throughout the game, making sounds of... yeah, it was really interesting to see that unfold, because once you start playing a game and you play it with the same people over and over again, it is a different experience when it comes to these types of games. So it was interesting to see that, and I wanted to ask you, and then I'll hand it over to you, Steve, to ask about this other game that we played. But I wanted to ask you, what was it that made you all of a sudden say, "Oh, this is an awesome game. I like the way this works." For me, especially the Vitalicer games, it is that interconnectivity of actions. So the action may be very simple. You place, a colonist here, you take a card, you take a resource of that card. There's nothing complicated about that. It's very, very easy. But as you said before, that action then can be having cascading effects for until the end of the game, really, because you picked a different card than something else, and another building has been built, and that completely throws out of whack the other players as well. So even if you have a strategy, you need to be flexible enough to change it. And these games, because they have this maze concept that you just described, they give you that capability because there's so much you can do. But on Mars specifically, what was it, that clicked for you and you kind of went, oh, I like the way this works now?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really caught me was that ecosystem that exists in there, how, each resource is almost needed by another. It's like a closed loop in a way. And you're trying to, it's, how would I describe it? It's like a merry-go-round. And each of, the rides on that merry-go-round are all connected and need each other. And you're trying to hop onto it when it's in motion and keep that momentum. It's like, but if you take out one of the pieces, the whole thing sort of collapses. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's just, you need oxygen to build this, and then that building needs that, and that needs that. Be like, and it becomes a chicken and egg situation. It's like, well, what do I need first? If I need that to make that, but I need something. It's just, it's trying to step into. You're trying to create momentum. That's what it felt like to me. And sort of that there's an ecosystem and you're trying to get this ball rolling and get things moving, but there's almost no help from the game. You've got to try and figure it out yourself. And
I love that.
It's such a good puzzle to try and solve. It's like, okay, well, if I do this, it'll enable this. And then I could do this and this, then, and you're trying to build this momentum. But like you said, other players can then step in and totally cut that momentum. But you've got to try and figure out a way to divert that and keep it going. And it's really, really tricky to do. That's probably the best way I can describe on Mars.
Does that resemble your experience, Steve, that you had with Vinhos? Or if we take it a step further than Venus, because Venus is nowhere near as complex as on Mars. What about a project that we played the other night?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't find Vinhos too heavy. I thought it made a lot of sense, I guess. And it's one of the things that has surprised me about heavy games in this hobby is I think I was burned early. So early in the hobby, I'd played a couple of heavy games, and to this day, I still consider them that they were just heavy for heavy's sake. They were just difficult games because they were. It didn't add to the experience at all, and that kind of threw me off that style of game. But as I've gradually gone through the hobby, I've played a few more and realized, no, that's what it is. It's once you understand the game, it's so enriching and it's so rewarding, like you mentioned, and you know where you're placed because of how you're responding to your gameplay. So, for example, if in the perfect examples, we played Gaia Project the other night, Def, and although I was ahead on the leaderboard, on the scoreboard, pretty much from the start,
yes,
I knew that I wasn't going to win that game because I was never confident in what I was doing. I was trying to get something going, but I wasn't really hitting it, and I knew that at some point that was going to come back to bite me, and it certainly did, and it was of no surprise. And at the end, we actually found out that I had an unfair advantage that I wasn't aware of, and that still didn't help me. But I knew it. If you asked me, I was up by like 10, 15 points at one point, and if you were to stop there and say, "Oh, you're doing really well, Steve. How do you think you'll finish?" I would have gone probably last. Like it was at no point in that game did I feel confident. But then if I play a heavy game and I do feel confident, so it's probably not on the same level of complexity, but something like Terraforming Mars. I can play Terraforming Mars and I know that the way that I'm playing is going to lead to a very competitive score at the end of the game. And I also know when that derails and I'm not heading that way. And that's what I love about that game, is because whenever I play it, I kind of feel a bit smart. I kind of feel like I've got this in the bag, or I understand. At least if I don't, I understand it. And it takes a good player to kind of challenge me in that game, and that's only come after so many plays and learning the game's nuances. And that's what I really liked about Gaia Project was I liked the fact that I played it through. I understand all of the mechanics now. I understand how to play that game.
Yeah.
But now I need to learn how to play that game. Now I need to learn how to do it better. And that's what those heavy games to me offer is that challenge of continual growth. We talk a lot about Quacks of Quedlinburg on this podcast. It's certainly not a heavy game. And I knew after the first game that win or lose isn't really up to me. Like, there are some things, some decisions you can make, but you can play that game. If there was a blueprint to how to play that game the best way, you're still not going to win every game.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
When you get into those heavier games, it's not about that anymore. If you lose a game, it's likely because of the decision you've made. Yeah, exactly.
There's no hand-holding. There's no catch-up mechanics. It's, heavy games are pretty much unapologetic about being heavy, and, more or less, the score at the end of the game really reflects your decision-making. It's not the game's fault. Yeah. It's pretty much going to be your fault.
Yeah. And we mentioned not long ago, Jules, about our game of Brass Birmingham. I made a terrible error, and that has basically meant that I have no chance in that game. And the first person to know that was me. And then it gradually everyone sort of figured it out. I think Jules figured it out at the turn of the era when he said, "Why haven't you moved up in any money?" "Oh, because you're on 0."
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew as soon as I'd made that mistake that was going to take a fairly big workaround to fix, and I just didn't have the resources or the time to do it. And that's how punishing and crucial these games are. The decisions you make are. So.
Well, it's awesome to see that you've enjoyed these games, for the first time, and I'm sure that we'll see a lot more of these games on our group in the podcast moving forward. I can see you going through the same sort of process I went through, and once we played Vineyards, we were the same as you, Steve. We thought, "Oh, this is on a different level than anything we've played before," but it's actually not that intimidating. And after that, it was like, "Yep, on Mars. Next, let's do it."
Yeah.
So
even like I played, I'll talk about it in my Sizzling game, but I played A Feast for Odin as my Sizzling game this week, and that box is daunting, not necessarily from a heaviness, but just because it's my first Uwe Rosenberg game, and it's a big box game, and it's full of stuff and little bits and pieces and whatever else. But the game itself as a whole is quite complex, but each individual element is actually really basic and really simple. And as I said, I'll talk about it a bit more, but later. But you sort of sit back after you play a game like that and go, "What was I so concerned with? Like, why did I let it sit on my shelf for so long?"
Yeah, I guess just listening to everything we've sort of discussed, I guess if you're thinking about heavy games, if you've heard about On Mars and any of Vital's games. There's plenty we haven't mentioned. I've got one behind me, which is Feudum, and I cannot wait to open that up. There's things like Anachrony we haven't mentioned even. There's so many out there. I think if you're to take away anything from what we've sort of discussed, it would be, the games are incredibly rewarding, and it's so much fun to try and learn the game. Yes, there can be a steep learning curve, but it just takes time. It's not the learning curve is not, "Oh, you're not smart enough, therefore you'll never play it." It's just you got to put in the time. It's really a time thing.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think also that from my understanding, it's not the actions in the game that are complex, it's the consequences and the interplay in those games that are complex. Because of one thing you did, it changes everything, or the options, burst wide open. You haven't just made one small change in the board state. You've completely changed, the trajectory of everything. You've altered the economics of the whole game from one decision. And yeah, I guess one thing we haven't really mentioned as well is that the replayability of these games is off the charts because there's so much that can be different and so much can change just depending on your decision making and the order of that decision making in the game. Nothing's ever going to play out the same ever.
Yes, that's a really valid point. And as a final takeaway, I would just take a pass from your words, Jules, and say, don't be scared, don't be intimidated by these games. They, as you said, Jules, they simply take a bit of time to get used to, but they reward you so much for it.
Well, there you go. If you are wanting to take that step, hopefully we've helped you make that decision. And like we always say, we talk about these games because we love them. And if you're unsure and you would like someone to help you through these games, then jump onto our Discord channel, get into our chat and ask us, tag us and say, hey, Steve, you always talk about Scythe. I'm a bit afraid of that. Can you teach me how to play it? I mean, that's not as heavy as some of these other games, but it definitely was a barrier for me initially. I took a long time to get that off my shelf. On Mars, I really want to test myself with On Mars. Well, tag Def, tag Jules, ask them to teach you how to play it. If you're uncomfortable going away and learning about it yourself, then there's always someone in our barbecue that will help you because we love playing it as well. But with that, we'll move on to another great source of potential heavy games, Kickstarter.
Heavy games and light wallets.
Yes.
It's the balance of life.
We were talking about Kickstarter earlier tonight, and we thought we might come up. We've always got addicts, not experts. But what did we say? No regrets, and no money.
No money, but no regrets.
So, what's been catching your eye on Kickstarter lately?
Oh, the thing that's caught my eye as of today is a game called Streets, and it's by Sinister Fish Games. So they're the publishing company that made Villages that came out, I think it was last year. It would have been last year. And anyway, Streets looks fantastic. It's essentially a game. Oh, how do I describe it? It's a tile laying game mixed with sort of economy and set collection and comboing the cards you play and the people that go on the streets and move around. I've only had a brief look into it, but it looks really nice. The artwork is fantastic. The production quality looks amazing. Villages was fantastic production quality. It's it looks fantastic. So I'm pretty sure it only just started either today or yesterday, their Kickstarter campaign, but it's doing really well. It's already funded, so that's fantastic. But I think it's well worth having a look at. It looks really, really good.
Yeah, I saw the Rado playthrough earlier today, and it definitely piqued my interest. What's the price point for the basic, like just the standard game?
So they've got two versions. They've got a standard edition, and I think that was around the $45 mark. And then you can get the deluxe edition, which has custom printed.
Who would do that?
Oh, who would ever do that? Such a crazy thing. No, but we've there's a deluxe edition which has prettier meeples and nicer bits instead of cardboard. They're wooden pieces. I think that's probably up around the $70 or so mark. So not outrageous. It's certainly no Nemesis, but but yeah, I can vouch for the production quality of their games. It's really, really good. So I feel like you're definitely getting your value for money either way you go, whether you're getting a standard or a deluxe edition.
Fair enough. What about yourself, Def?
Awesome. That sounds great, Jules. I know there's a couple of games coming up over the next few days that I was really waiting for. One is a game called Mercado de Lisboa, which is coming out September the 3rd by Eagle Griffin Games. It's actually a Vitalo Certi game, but it is a light game this time. So that took us by surprise when they announced that. But it's an automatic back for us. We love the Certi games, and the Eagle Griffin productions are simply the best we've ever seen in the in the market, in the board game industry. They're absolutely spectacular. So we have no doubt that this will be, up there with them. It's meant to be a quick, thinky filler game, they call it. So I've got my reservations about how light it's going to be.
Well, I've actually played it, Def.
Oh, wow, there we go. Do tell.
Yeah. It light filler, thinky filler is the perfect description for it. I played it with a couple of the Discord members, and it was all of our first time playing, and we were done in 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. The actions are really simple, but it's choosing when to pull the trigger on those actions and thinking about the timing. It's fantastic. I love the theme. It looks really pretty in the tabletop simulator, but as you said, Eagle Gryphon Games, their production quality is fantastic. So I'm going to be getting this one 100%. I loved the play of it, and yeah, it was fantastic. Really, really good.
Well, there you go. And the second one I was looking forward to is the Seventh Citadel, which I believe is coming out on second week of
Brace
September.
yourselves.
Yeah, so this is obviously the second game after the Seventh Continent, and I kind of missed out on that first Kickstarter, but this time I'm going to be on it. The exploration approach and the kind of loneliness kind of brings with it, because most people that have played Seventh Continent say that don't play this with other people, just play it on your own. Exploring the island and trying to untangle the curses, it appeals to me. It seems to be quite adventurous without a lot of elements of battle or things like that can be quite distracting from the game itself. And so the Seventh Citadel, I think, is going to be a game that I think it will do really well on Kickstarter. Actually, I think the Seventh Continent has created a bit of a cult, following for that company. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah, this is definitely an instant back for me. I'm a massive fan of Seventh Continent. I don't know much about Seventh Citadel, actually. I don't need to know much. I need to know that it's made by Serious Pulp and it's a similar style of game. That's enough. It's my only concern is for the wallets of backers, because if, just like you said, Def, if you haven't got Seventh Continent and they put Seventh Continent up there as an option, it's gonna be a hefty credit card bill. That month.
It'll be a wallet and an organ.
It's everything you said about Seventh Continent. You're spot on. I only spoke about it a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the bracket, when we came up in the bracket, and it's, even if you don't like it, you would still have to put it as the number one adventure game of all time. There's nothing that compares to that feeling of literally being dropped on an island, on an area that you know nothing really about. You've got some distant memories and some mud maps, and that's it. And the rest of the world is just for you to explore. It's fascinating. It's hard, and it's not very rewarding for the first few plays. But once you get through it, those first couple of plays and understand how the game works, it's my favorite solo game by a fair stretch. I have also only played it solo. I assume it would work just as well with other characters, but it's such a big thing to drop on someone and say, hey, let's play this game. Oh, sweet. How do we play? Well, we start on this little tile, and that's all I can tell you. Let's go. That's too much to try and help people through. Yes. So I do like it as a solo game. Seventh Citadel will be hopefully just every bit as good. And again, like we mentioned with Eagle Gryphon, Serious Pulp do a really good job of presenting their game in a certain way, right from the box cover to the card art to the time taken in that card art to make them interesting and make them something that you need to look at and need to explore. The characters in the game, so there's some there that are, like, for example, H.P. Lovecraft is a character in Seventh Continent, as well as other random people from pop culture, but also some like actual adventurers and things. So it's a really interesting mix. So, definitely an insta back for me. And like I said, Def, if you haven't played Seventh Continent yet, you can either wait until I'm finished it and I'll sell my copy to you. You'll probably have Seventh Citadel before that happens, though. Or you can just order it with Seventh Citadel and set yourself up for the next 5 years.
You do need to stop playing Scythe at some point in your life, Steve. You need to make room for other games.
Oh, trust me, I need to make room. That conversation works just how you said it. Except you need to replace Scythe with board games and live the rest of your life as the other side of it. But look, I do play a lot of Scythe, but I play Scythe with my Scythe group, basically. But yeah, Seventh Continent is that everyone's gone to bed. It's 8:30. I'm too awake to go to sleep. I'll pull out Seventh Continent, play it for a couple of hours, and I might play it for a couple of hours. And sometimes I don't even care about the curse. I'll just go and explore. I'll just turn left and just keep going until I've come across something that I've come across before, and then I go, oh, that's cool. So that matches up with that. Oh, well, sweet as. I know that for next time. So you don't even really have to have a goal to follow in that game. It's immense. But anyway, that was yours, Def. But it would have been mine too. So I don't actually have anything I'm backing at the moment, but that's coming out shortly, and that'll definitely be my next back, I dare say. So that'll do us for Kickstarter.
Listeners' wallets. So
what was that? Sorry.
As I said, you said you don't have one, and I said, this is, surely this is enough to lighten our listeners' wallets enough. We don't need to give them any more for this episode.
That's right. Yeah, and the reason, you could argue that the fact that I haven't had any Kickstarters around going for the last few probably month or two means that when Seventh Citadel comes, well, that I might as well back it, because it's not like I'm backing anything else. Not shoveling money into the Kickstarter pit as I have in the past. Let's move on before I get in trouble. So that'll do it for Kickstarters this week. There's starting to get a few good things back up on there. It's been a bit quiet, I think, in the Kickstarter world, so good to see. We're going to move on, though, to the board game bracket. Are you all good, guys?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, so it's getting really exciting with the bracket at the moment. We aren't setting up a new battle this week because we are resolving the second last battle for the first round, and then the last one will be resolved on the next episode. So we've got On Mars versus Eclipse tonight. So we've spoken a lot about On Mars already, and we had Sarah on the show talk about Eclipse a couple of episodes ago, and I don't know about you guys, but while she was talking, I may have gone and pre-ordered it. So it sounded really good to me. I haven't played either of these games, though. I missed out on the On Mars teach that Def did, and I'll miss out again this Sunday because it's Father's Day. But I will get one, and I'll learn how to play it. But these both games really excite me, and I really want to try both of them. Have either of you guys played Eclipse?
I have not.
No, but I've been really keen to try it as well. It's just one of these games where I don't know how, dominant the battle part of the game is, and my partner doesn't like those kinds of games, so I don't want to spend a couple $100 to find out I cannot play the game. But it is one of the games I've been really, really keen to try.
Any inkling as to which way this went on the bracket?
Yes, On Mars.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Because the no question of death, just like, why are we even talking? Why are we
Anything else is an insult.
Why have we moved on to the next segment? Well, yeah, right, you are, Def. It actually won quite comfortably. It was about 3-1 in the votes.
All right.
So On Mars will soldier on to the second round. I'm not quite sure what it's up against in round 2, but I'm really looking forward to some of the battles that we've already looked at for round 2.
It'll be hard to beat that heavyweight, literally.
Yes, it'll be certainly hard to knock it down. That's for sure. So this just leaves the final battle that is already running. It'll be resolved, which we've mentioned a couple of times, which is Chronicles of Crime versus Everdell. Now, Dan talked about Chronicles of Crime last episode, and Connor did a good job, Def, describing Everdell, but it was actually you that put Everdell up onto the bracket. Is there anything else you want to add to try and sway people to vote for Everdell over Chronicles of the Crime?
Yeah, look, I mean, since that episode, we've also got the two latest expansions for the game, Spirecrest and Belfair. And you kind of go back from, take a step back and go from, oh, this game is really great, we've been playing it like crazy, to really appreciate the vision of its creators about how they've gone to create that world. And Andrew Bosley's art is spectacular, and we've had him on the show before to talk about it. But the vision of that game from the creators is, I find, great. They even the board design of the expansions seems that it was thought in advance to fit in a certain way that fits with each other on the table. It becomes an absolute table hog when you brought all out in the table, but it just adds more elements to the game. And you would think that with a game that has already 3 expansions and there's one more before it finishes, I think you would expect to see some elements of unbalance. And especially some of the things that the Spirecrest and Belfair expansions introduced are quite radical. Like they reduce your worker, one of them reduces your workers by 1, and you only have like 5 workers to start with. So it's quite radical, but it balances out the rest of the game so well that you cannot but appreciate the thought that's gone into it. And obviously it's a gorgeous game. I don't think we will ever stop playing it. So yeah, my vote is still sitting with that.
All right, so that's the only bracket battle you can still vote for. So jump on to our socials and find the Chronicles of Crime versus Everdell and have your say. And then we will start round 2. Maybe not on the next podcast, because I'm pretty sure the next podcast is a trivia night. But in the coming episodes, we will start round 2, where it gets really nice and interesting, and all those games that just got through on their seeding that didn't even have to beat a game are now going to have some hefty challenges. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's the board game bracket. Nice and short and sweet for that one. Let's head straight over to Swearing an Oath. Now, just before we get started on Swearing an Oath, this is a bit of an interesting episode because we seemed as though, in a weird kind of way, this episode was kind of forgotten about a little bit. We've got a lot of stuff happening in the podcast coming up. So when I sent a message out to Def and Adrian today going, oh, you guys ready for the show? Adrian said, whoops, I can't do it. And Def was like, oh, yeah, that's right, we're on. And I was a bit the same, actually, this morning until I thought about it. So we called Jules in at the last minute. So I'll be interested to know how both of you guys have gone with your swearing of oaths games, given that fact. So would anyone like to volunteer to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'll take the shame first because I didn't fulfill my oath. Not only it felt like I wasn't even expecting to record an episode today, but it also feels like it was a very short time ago that I was on another episode. It isn't. It's just life. But still, I didn't fulfill my oath this time. I had I think my oath last time was to play Anachrony, which had just arrived that day. I haven't managed to play it yet, but I've managed to buy another Mind Clash game, Tricarian. So,
well, that'll help.
That's not how oaths work.
Why didn't anybody tell me that before, Jules?
That's a
it's
different.
I swear to buy. It's I swear to play.
Yeah, and I don't.
That'd
want
be too easy.
I don't want to dig a deeper hole for myself here by swearing an oath to play both these massive games. So I'll stick with Anachrony, and I swear to play Anachrony by the next time I'm on the podcast. I'm positive this time I'll manage it.
Fair enough. I'm interested to see what happens tonight then, Def. I know you've had a big day, but the last time you missed an oath, you stayed up and played both games that night after the episode.
It wasn't small games. I think one was Brass and...
fantastic. What about yourself, Jules? Oh, sorry. No, you swore to play. You swore to play that. Sorry, I missed that. Jules, how'd you go?
So I had Portal, which I got done. So that's a board game based off the video game, and it's fantastic. I've played it before. It was just a game I hadn't played in a long time, but essentially, you know, I haven't actually played. I think I've only played the video game once or twice, so I really don't know the parallels other than the references to the game. But it's a nice little puzzle, and it's kind of strange. But you have test subjects, and the board's kind of like a conveyor belt, and you get the bonus. The tiles at the very end of the conveyor belt get incinerated, and you get the bonus on that tile if you have the most test subjects on there, and you basically try and win the game by having the most cake on this conveyor belt. And so there's a bit of a puzzle of the board pieces keep moving, but you want to keep your cake pieces on there, so you don't want them to fall off the edge and to get incinerated, because then you can never get them back. And cake is how you win the game. But yeah, it's a fantastic puzzle. Really, really like it. And it's very unique. There's not many other, I don't know of any other board games that have that sort of moving board, like a conveyor belt sort of feel. I can't think of anything else, but yeah, fantastic. Love it. I can't wait to get it out again, to be honest. And my other one was Brass Birmingham. So I think we're going to have to decide together whether or not I've done that. So I was playing that with Steve and with JB, and we paused it. We're probably halfway through the second half of the game. Is that right?
Yeah, we're not far away.
Yeah, we're very close to the finish. Now,
the fact that I was getting absolutely schooled by you and I've played the game, I don't think I've got a. I don't think I can jump in here and go, oh no, that doesn't count.
So I would
can be
like
quoted in saying that I want this game to start again because I'm doing so poorly.
Okay, so I think I'll need to get from you, Steve. Do you want to concede defeat and say that was completed?
I don't want to concede, but I'll say it's completed. I mean, I want to finish the game, even though I know I'm going to lose. But yeah, no, I think you've done enough to call that a tick. And
I've proved myself, have I? Okay. Yeah, well, Brass is phenomenal. I'm not going to explain how to play the game, but for me, that would have to be one of the best purchases I've made this year. It is absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait to play it again. Cannot say enough good things about it. It's complex, but so good, so good. Yeah, I'm speechless about it. Really, I cannot wait to play it again. So those are my two games.
I didn't. Sorry, I was just saying, the first time I played it, I really didn't like it. And then the second time I played it, I went, oh, hang on. No, I've missed something here. This is fantastic. So, sorry, I interrupted you there. What was your,
all good. I think, we'll definitely have to do a reset for you, Steve, and you can redeem yourself. And
I seriously was embarrassed. Like it was embarrassing. I was the person who'd played that game the most out of the three of us.
Yeah, it was me and JB's I was practically first time
jumping off a cliff. I was going so far backwards, and we stopped it. Just for those who know the game, they'll understand. We stopped it, and I was at zero. Income. What do you call it? Income, like residual income. And the other guys around on 12 or 13 or something. And my next move in the next round was to take a loan because I had no money left. So I was going to go back to -3. Just wasn't going well. Was not going well. But anyway, yeah. So okay. So what's the next game? Sorry.
So next game. I know I'm doing an episode really soon, so I've got one that I want to do. But I'm pretty confident I can't do it before the next episode. But if we're willing to have a pass for the next one, I'll bring out a big gun. So,
are we giving him a pass?
Depends what the big one is.
It is Vindication.
Oh, I like it.
I am very keen to get Vindication, so I'm happy for you to take the time, play it, and then talk about it, because generally with Jules, you talk about a board game like that, I add it to my cart. So that's fine.
So the longer you
I'm
give
fine
me,
with
the
that.
more you have to save. More time you have to
No,
save those
fair. That's
pennies.
fair. Yeah.
Okay.
So Jules and I will be back on. Well, we're all doing a trivia night on Saturday, but then the next episode after that is a special episode,
Yes.
and Jules and I will be on with Adrian for that one. So
Mhm.
yes, I understand it's very soon. So that just leaves me. Oh, sorry, you didn't swear it. So I better
Yeah.
let you swear
So
it.
I, Jules Watson, swear by the time I'm on not the next podcast, but the following, whenever that is, I will have played Vindication.
Excellent. So I did mention earlier what my oath game was, and that was a feast for Odin. And in the last episode, I actually put up a poll on our Board Game BBQ community saying, what do you guys think I should try next? And it was a tie between a Feast for Odin Gaia project and I think The Godfather. And I actually played Gaia project before I played a Feast for Odin, even though I swore to play a Feast for Odin. So I was kind of like, oh, I hope I've done the right thing here. But I set up a Feast for Odin, which took a long time. There's like 16 punch boards. There's a
Wow.
lot of pieces. So that took about 2 hours. I felt like I'd played the game already before it even started.
I think the game had played you.
Yeah, absolutely. But I set it up and I'm like, oh, I don't want to pack it up now. Like it's out. I'm going to leave it out. I'm going to make sure I play it before I pack it up. I played the solo version, which is basically the same game. It's not like it's a different version. It's basically a challenge. And what happens is you've got 12 Viking workers that you put out on the board. And then theoretically your opponent would be doing the same thing. And then that's the end of the round. But in this one, what you do is you have 2 sets of Viking workers. You put out your blue set. I use blue and yellow. You put out your blue set, and then you had to leave them on the board for the second round where you use your yellows. So your own characters are blocking your own moves. And then you put the yellow workers out, and then you take the blue workers back and leave the yellow workers out there. And that's kind of how the solo variant works. So it's still the exact same game. It's just that that's how you play the solo. And I tell you what, it's it's hard to have a gauge on how good a game is after I played it twice. I played it back to back. But it's hard to have a gauge on how good a game is after 2 plays. But I tell you what, I see this game being a long-term stayer in like my top 10. It's so good. It is just like I mentioned earlier, there's so many decisions to be made. Again, like we talked about, it's not about the clear path to victory in this thing. There's so many different ways. There's a board of choices. I couldn't even tell you how many choices there are, but it'd be more than 15. And of those 15, there's also broken into 4. So that's 60 choices you can make. And some of them interlink, some of them don't. So what I mean by 15 by 4 is the first action might be to get a boat, and you need wood for that. So then you've got to work out where you got to get wood so you can get the boat. But if you put 1 worker on the boat, you can get a small one. If you put 2 workers, then you can get a bigger one. If you put 3 workers, you get a bigger one again. 4 workers, I can't quite remember what you get for 4, but it's something better again. But then you start the game with only 5 or 6 workers. So you can't really allocate that many workers to those spaces because you don't have, otherwise that's all you're going to do. So you've kind of got to spread thin early, and then you get more workers as the game goes on, and then that opens up those harder choices. But that's just that side of it. On top of that, you get all these pieces, and then you've got to fill out your hometown, which is this grid. Let's say it's probably a 15 by 15 grid. And on that grid are spaces that show your income. So if you, there's kind of like an income running diagonally across the grid, and you need to cover all the spots in the square to get the next level of income. So if you want to go from 0 to 1, then you've got to cover the first box. But then if you want to go from 1 to 2, you've got to cover the box around that box, and then the box around that box. So to get more income, it gets more and more tiles needed to be added to this board. But on top of that, there's also these tiles that are already on the board that you have to surround, and then you get them as bonuses, things like mead or wood, and then maybe even some different things like you'll get a cowhide or something like that, which is another one of these tiles. And on top of that, the top kind of half of the board in a L shape or upside down L shape, is -1 and then negative victory points. So you need to cover them so you don't end up scoring a heap of negative points at the end of the game. So you've got this little Tetris battle going on this side that you have to factor into the decisions you make out of all the actions you get. You can also then explore other islands, which bring you another pad of all these squares that you've got to fill, and also negative numbers as well. Some of those come with benefits. There's houses and different types of dwellings that you can get, and some of those have these grids on them. It's immense. There's not only are you thinking about, okay, I need to get this stuff to fill these spaces, you're also thinking, now I've got this stuff, how do I fit this onto my board to best utilize what I've got? All the while, like, you can upgrade resources. So it's got the way the game's set up is really good. It's got these little containers that the yellow ones in spot 1 upgrade to the red ones in spot 2, which upgrade to the green ones in spot 3, and the blue ones in spot 4. The green and the blue is the best for filling in the spaces because you can have them touching. The green can work, but you can't have them touching on your grid. So you really want to get the blue for that. That said, every round you've got to feed your villagers, and you can only feed them with the yellow and the red. So you can't upgrade everything. You've got to keep something back so you can feed your workers. And it's always a situation where you get to a point and you go, right, oh, crap, I've got to feed my workers. Where can I go and get some food? Where's some fish? Where's some beans? I need something. Just so much going on. And I say that, but the solo game takes probably an hour, maybe less than an hour.
Okay.
Wow.
So it's not this huge, big, sprawling, give up a night's entertainment kind of thing. I'd be interested to play it with people. I'd want to play it with 3 or 4 people and see what difference that makes. But then even then, it's really I talked about Smartphone Inc. a few weeks ago, and it reminds me a lot of that, where there is a lot of actions. I think there's 14 actions per round. But a lot of them are do this, end of that action, move to the next thing, do this, end of that action. So it does flow quite well. So I'm blown away by this game. I cannot believe I liked it as much as I did. So a feast for Odin. I'm so glad I got it off my shelf of shame. It is not staying on my shelf much at all in the near future, I foresee. It's Father's Day this weekend, so I can guilt people into playing games with me. And it'll be coming out. But actually, having said that, I think this is a game my wife will love. She doesn't particularly like heavy games, but she does like games like Orléans, where there's a few decisions that can be made. And I really think that the Tetris-style polyomino shape side of this game is something that she will just sink her teeth into and absolutely love. She'll be so confused on the first play, but after a couple of plays, I reckon she'll fall in love with it. So, that's a feast for Odin. It sounds like I'm talking about it like my sizzling game, only that I had it as my oath. It's not my sizzling game. So, so much good. But I'm going to do something a bit different for my next oath. As we've talked about in the previous couple of episodes, we are now sponsored by VR Distribution, and one of the games that they are publishing throughout Australia exclusively is My City, which is a Spiel des Jahres winner this year. So I'm lucky enough to get my hands on one of those, and I'm going to try that out. So I, Stephen Chivers, swear to play the Spiel des Jahres winner, My City.
Nice.
By the time I'm on the next podcast, fingers crossed. Wow. Well, I did a lot of talking there, but hopefully it came across how much I really enjoyed that game. And also yourself, that was probably our longest oath segment, I think.
That was a fairly hefty one.
Talk and, yeah. But thank you very much, everyone, for listening to the show. We have come to the end. It's been a fantastic episode. Stick around and check out our next couple of episodes. We've got some big things coming up. So firstly, our next episode will be a all-in trivia night with everyone from the barbecue. We've done one of these before. It was a load of fun. Adrian is an amazing host. So Adrian will be running that, and we'll have it up on YouTube as well as on the podcast. And we've had a few special guests on the show. There's this little old game called Pandemic Legacy Season 0 that's coming out very shortly. And we are lucky enough to have Matt Leacock joining us on the show coming up very soon. So that will be extremely good, and we're very much looking forward to that. So that's all coming up in the future. As for now, though, as mentioned in the previous in the show, jump on our Discord, Board Game BBQ. You'll jump on there. You can find us playing games all the time and looking for a game. There's also heaps of board game chat, general chat, whatever you want to do there, some bargains, all kinds of things. We're also on Facebook. Our Board Game BBQ community just hit 250 members, which means those people who entered in the Sorcerer's Stones competition will we're revealing that. And on top of that, we've also got our Advent Games competition, which is really simple to enter. All you really need to do is go to adventgames.com.au, have a look at some of the games there, look at the categories that they break their games into, jump onto our Facebook page, our Facebook group, and comment on the Advent Games competition post with your favorite category on the Advent Games page and why. And you could potentially win a copy of Kitchen Rush 2nd Edition or the Taverns of Tiefenthal. And that is a worldwide competition. So Dean at Advent Games has been tremendous and has agreed to send that anywhere in the world. So don't be limited just by our Australian borders. And North American people, take note when you run your competitions. Look how generous we're being in Australia.
Come on, share the love.
Posts to the US. That's right. And also, as on top of all that, Instagram, Twitter, we're on there as well. Instagram, if you've got a game that you want to get off of your shelf, take some photos of it, put it up there. Hashtag Shelf of Shame, hashtag Oath Fulfilled, hashtag Swear an Oath, whatever you want to do, we'll catch it. And we love seeing that sort of stuff from the community as well. But as for tonight, that'll do us for this show. Thanks very much, Jules and Def.
Thanks, guys. It's been awesome.
And we'll see you on the next podcast. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, you got there. That was a marathon.
That is a monologue of all monologues. Far out. Oh,
need a glass of water.
Excuse me. Can I go to bed now?
When I was talking there, Def, I saw you put your head down. I'm like, oh crap, he's gone to sleep.
At some point, let me just put my head back here. And I thought, if I do that, I'm going to fall asleep. It's the Uber of all time.
Wouldn't that be awesome? On the first YouTube video we put out of us on the podcast, and Def, Steve's talking again.
Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned Scythe.
Hey. That was Def tonight.
Oh, dear.
Very good.
That was good. Really good.
I really enjoyed that. It was tight too. An hour and 20 minutes. That's a really tight episode. So, yeah, I thought we got a lot of good stuff in there.
Yes.
A bit more serious with you two. So,
unlike
no poop jokes.
Yeah.
No,
Mitch and Adrian.
Yeah.
Well, let's wait for another on Mars game between us. I reckon it's going to be a bit more competitive this time, so I'm sure we'll have more next time.
I'm keen as. I'd love to play Gaia Project again. I'm going to try and play it this weekend, like I said. But
yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, that was really enjoyable.
I'm keen to learn it.
You'd love it. It's you know when you play games and you know that certain people you just know would take to that game. You take to that game for sure, Jules.
Mm.
Yeah.